The Nexus bar wasn't like the dirty space stations you'd find on the outer rim. This place was special. It floated right in the middle of neutral space, perfectly positioned between 7 different alien civilizations. Think of it as Switzerland but in space. When governments needed to talk without starting wars, they came here. When traders wanted to make deals without getting shot, they came here. And when travelers just wanted a strong drink after a long haul through the stars, well, they definitely came here. The bar itself was a massive structure, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Lights from nearby nebulas cast strange colors through the reinforced windows. Inside, the main room was huge, with tables and booths designed for every body type imaginable. Some seats were filled with water for aquatic species. Others had heating lamps for cold-blooded visitors. The air was filtered and adjusted constantly, keeping everyone comfortable no matter what they breathed back home. Tonight started like any other night. The usual crowd was there. A group of insect-like merchants clicked and chittered in one corner, arguing over trade routes. 3 floating jellyfish creatures drifted near the ceiling, their bioluminescent bodies pulsing with soft light as they shared stories. A family of rock-skinned miners sat near the bar, their heavy bodies making the reinforced chairs creak. The atmosphere was relaxed, almost peaceful. Then the door opened and everything changed in an instant. The first thing everyone noticed was the sound. Heavy footsteps, each one making the floor vibrate slightly. The door frame was built to accommodate large species, reinforced and tall, but even so, the creature entering had to duck low to fit through. When it straightened up inside, the entire bar went silent. Not the comfortable quiet of people enjoying drinks, but the terrible silence of prey animals that just realized a predator walked into their den. The VR act stood there, taking up space like a living nightmare. 4 meters tall, which meant it could look down at even the largest species in the room. Its body was covered in thick plates that looked like bone but were actually harder than most metals. These plates overlapped like armor, colored a deep gray-black that seemed to absorb light. 6 eyes, all completely black without any visible pupil, scanned the room slowly. Each eye moved independently, taking in every detail, cataloging every potential victim. The creature's mouth was a horror show all by itself. Multiple rows of serrated teeth, designed not just to kill but to tear and rend. Its breath came out in low, rasping sounds that seemed to echo despite the noise dampeners in the ceiling. 4 arms hung at its sides, each ending in claws that had clearly seen use. Old scars marked the armor plates, trophies from countless fights. Behind the bar, Kill9 the bartender felt his 3 hearts start racing. Kill9 was a Zentari, a species with purple skin and 6 tentacle arms that made him perfect for mixing multiple drinks at once. He'd been running this bar for 20 years and had seen almost everything. Drunken brawls, political arguments, even the occasional smuggler trying to hide from authorities. But this was different. This was genuinely dangerous. Because Kill9 recognized this particular VR act. Everyone who worked in neutral space knew the stories about war leader Grathnor. The creature wasn't just a random predator. It was famous, or rather, infamous. Grathnor had a reputation that stretched across multiple star systems. It hunted sentient beings for sport, collecting trophies from intelligent species. Diplomatic immunity laws prevented anyone from arresting it, and its home government actually encouraged such behavior as a show of strength. The bar's occupants reacted immediately. The insect merchants scattered, their wing cases rattling in panic as they pressed themselves against the far wall. The jellyfish creatures shot upward, trying to get as close to the ceiling as possible. The rock-skinned miners, normally too proud to show fear, quietly moved their chairs back, putting more distance between themselves and the entrance. Several smaller species simply fainted, their bodies shutting down from pure terror. One patron, a bird-like creature with beautiful feathers, made the mistake of trying to flee toward the back exit. It moved too quickly, triggering Grathnor's hunting instincts. The predator's head snapped toward the movement, all 6 eyes locking on. The bird froze mid-step, trembling so badly its feathers rustled. Grathnor made a sound, something between a laugh and a growl, clearly enjoying the fear. But then something strange happened. In the corner booth, near the window overlooking the nebula, someone hadn't moved at all. While every other being in the bar either hid or prepared to run, this one figure just sat there calmly. Grathnor's eyes shifted, scanning until they found the anomaly. Was a human. Male, probably in his early 30s, though humans were hard to age accurately. His name was Jake Morrison, though nobody in the bar knew that yet. Jake was a cargo pilot, one of thousands who hauled freight between systems for barely enough credits to keep their ships running. His brown leather jacket had seen better days, covered in stains from hydraulic fluid and engine grease. His jeans were worn, his boots scuffed. He hadn't bothered shaving for at least a week, giving him a rough, tired appearance. Jake sat hunched over a battered data pad, the screen flickering slightly from some internal malfunction he'd been too broke to fix. His third whiskey sat beside him, ice melting slowly. He was completely absorbed in whatever he was reading, fingers swiping through screens, occasionally muttering under his breath about numbers. To everyone watching in horror, the human seemed utterly oblivious to the death that had just walked through the door. Grafnor tilted its massive head, confused. In its long career of hunting, prey always reacted. They ran, they hid, they begged, they fought. But they always reacted. This small creature just sat there, focused on its glowing rectangle like nothing else in the universe mattered. The predator's hunting instincts, honed over decades, flared hot. This was wrong. This was abnormal. This demanded investigation. The war leader took its first step toward Jake's table, and every being in the bar held their breath, waiting to see what would happen when the galaxy's most feared predator met the human who apparently didn't care. Grafnor began walking toward Jake's corner table, and with each step the entire structure of the bar seemed to protest. The floor plates, designed to handle heavy gravity species and reinforced specifically for that purpose, actually groaned under the weight. It wasn't a subtle sound either. Each footfall produced a deep metallic groan that resonated through the room, making glasses vibrate on tables and causing the liquid inside them to ripple outward in small waves. The predator's breathing was its own special kind of nightmare fuel. It came out in long, rasping hisses that sounded like air escaping from a damaged airlock. The sound had a wet quality to it, probably from the multiple lung chambers that Vrakt anatomy was known for. This wasn't just breathing. This was a sound that evolution had programmed into countless species as a danger signal. Hearing it triggered something deep in the primitive brain, something that screamed at you to run, hide, or play dead. As Grafnor got closer, more details became visible and somehow more terrifying. The scars on its armor plating weren't random. They were deliberate marks, tally marks carved by the creature itself. Each mark represented a sentient kill, a trophy taken from an intelligent being. There had to be hundreds of them, maybe thousands, covering every visible surface of its body. The claws on its four hands were stained dark and not from dirt or rust. The creature moved with purpose now, its 6 eyes all focused on Jake. 3 of the eyes tracked the human's position while the other 3 scanned for potential threats or escape routes the prey might use. This was a hunter that had perfected its craft over many years. It knew how prey thought, how they reacted, what mistakes they made in their panic. Jake, meanwhile, continued staring at his data pad like it contained the secrets of the universe. His expression was one of pure concentration mixed with growing frustration. His finger kept swiping back and forth between 2 screens, comparing numbers, occasionally tapping to bring up a calculator function. His lips moved slightly as he did mental math, completely absorbed in whatever financial crisis he was trying to solve. Grafnor reached the table and extended one massive clawed hand. The appendage was easily the size of Jake's entire torso. As it moved forward, it cast a shadow that fell across the data pad, darkening the screen. The shadow grew larger and larger until it engulfed not just the device but Jake's entire upper body. The temperature around the table seemed to drop as the predator loomed closer. Mounted on Grafnor's chest was a translator box, a standard piece of technology that allowed different species to communicate. The device was battered and old, covered in dents, probably taken from a previous victim. When it activated, the voice that came out was artificially generated but somehow still managed to sound menacing. The translation software tried its best to convey tone and intention across species barriers. Small creature, the voice growled, each word deliberately spaced for maximum impact. The translator added a slight echo effect that made it sound like multiple voices speaking at once. You sit while others flee. Are you paralyzed with fear or merely foolish? Around the bar, the other patrons watched in absolute silence. Several of them had pulled out their own communication devices, probably recording what they assumed would be footage of a human's last moments. Others had their appendages, tentacles, or limbs covering their sensory organs, unable to watch but unable to look away. The tension was thick enough to cut. Grafnor leaned down further, bringing its face within inches of Jake's. The movement was slow and deliberate, designed to give the prey time to truly appreciate what was about to happen. The Viraktha's breath washed over Jake, hot and smelling of something chemical and wrong. Multiple rows of serrated teeth became visible, each one designed to grip and tear. Saliva, or something similar, dripped from the creature's maw, falling onto the table surface where it sizzled slightly. I have killed warriors of 12 species, Grafnor continued, its voice dropping lower, more intimate, like it was sharing a dark secret. Trained fighters. Soldiers who dedicated their lives to combat. Champions who won tournaments and medals. The predator paused, letting that sink in. You will be my 13th trophy. Your skull will join my collection. For a long moment, Jake didn't react at all. His eyes remained fixed on the datapad screen, though the shadow made it nearly impossible to read. His finger hovered over the screen, frozen mid-swipe. Then, slowly, very slowly, he looked up. His eyes traveled up from the datapad, past the clawed hand, along the massive armored body, finally reaching Grafnor's face. Jake's expression wasn't fear. It wasn't even respect or awe. It was pure, undiluted irritation. The look you'd give someone who interrupted you during something important. His eyebrows drew together in annoyance, and his mouth twisted into a frown. Dude, Jake said, his voice flat and tired. He didn't yell or whisper. Just spoke in a normal, conversational tone like he was talking to another human at a coffee shop. I'm trying to figure out if I can afford the docking fees here. Can this wait? The words hung in the air for a moment, so unexpected that several translation devices in the bar actually malfunctioned briefly, unsure if they'd processed the statement correctly. Jake didn't wait for an answer. He simply waved his free hand in a dismissive gesture, the kind you'd use to brush away an annoying insect. Then he returned his full attention to the datapad, squinting at the numbers displayed on the screen, his lips moving again as he calculated something. The bar erupted in chaos. Not violent chaos, but the chaos of complete disbelief. Several alien patrons actually fainted on the spot, their bodies unable to process what they just witnessed. A small amphibian creature made a choking sound and collapsed into its water tank. The insect merchants started clicking frantically, their language translating to variations of impossible and suicidal madness. Behind the bar, Kill9 had been in the process of nervously cleaning a glass, his tentacles working on autopilot. When Jake spoke, the bartender's grip failed completely. The glass slipped from his grasp and fell, seeming to drop in slow motion. It hit the floor and shattered into dozens of pieces, the sound impossibly loud in the moment of shocked silence that followed. Grafnor's entire body went rigid. Its armor plates began rattling against each other, producing a sound like wind chimes made of bone. In VRACT body language, this was a sign of extreme confusion bordering on system error. The predator's 6 eyes blinked in sequence as if rebooting. Its mandibles worked silently, opening and closing without producing sound. Because in all its years, in all its hunts across dozens of worlds, Grafnor had never encountered this. Prey didn't ignore predators. It was impossible. It violated every natural law the creature understood. Fear was universal. Survival instinct was coded into the DNA of every living thing. Yet this small, soft, apparently fragile human had just dismissed it like an unwanted salesperson. The war leader's confusion began shifting into something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like anger mixed with wounded pride. Jake set down his drink with a deliberate clink against the table surface and picked up his datapad with both hands. He tilted it so the screen faced outward toward the massive predator looming over him. His fingers moved across the screen with practiced ease, pulling up his photo library. The first image that appeared was a beautiful shot of Earth taken from orbit, the kind of picture that space agencies love to use in their promotional materials. Alright, since you're apparently new to this whole area of space, let me give you some context here, Jake said, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something obvious to a child. This is Earth. My home planet. He tapped the screen to zoom in slightly. Look at it. Beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Looks peaceful, doesn't it? Like some kind of paradise world. He paused for effect, letting Grafnor's 6 eyes all focus on the image. The predator's aggressive posture had shifted slightly. Now it seemed more curious than threatening, which was probably more unsettling to the other bar patrons than the outright hostility had been. Wrong, Jake said flatly. Completely wrong. This planet spent millions of years actively trying to murder everything living on it, including us. Actually, especially us, since we were small and soft and basically walked around like convenient snack packages for everything with teeth. Jake swiped to the next image. A massive grizzly bear filled the screen, caught mid-roar with its mouth open wide showing enormous teeth. The photo had been taken from way too close, probably by some tourist who didn't understand personal space. This is a grizzly bear. 800 pounds of pure muscle, claws as long as your fingers, and a bite force that can crush a bowling ball. They can run 30 miles per hour, climb trees better than most species with climbing adaptations, and swim like they were born in water. Grafnor leaned closer to the screen, its mandibles clicking softly. The comparison was obvious even to alien eyes. The bear was massive compared to the human holding the camera. Yet humans had not only survived alongside these creatures but had actually thrived. Now check this out, Jake continued, swiping again. An anaconda appeared, coiled around what looked like a large pig. The snake's body was thicker than a human torso. This is an anaconda. It doesn't have venom. Doesn't need it. It just wraps around you and squeezes until every bone in your body breaks and your internal organs rupture. Then it swallows you whole. Takes about 4 hours to eat something the size of a full-grown human. The bar had gone completely silent now. Even the background music system seemed to have muted itself. Every patron who could see was watching the datapad screen. Those who couldn't were listening to translations or getting live updates from their companions. Jake's finger swiped again, and this time a tiny frog appeared. It was actually beautiful, colored in brilliant shades of blue and yellow that seemed to glow. It sat on a leaf barely bigger than a human thumb. And this little guy right here? This adorable tiny thing? This is a poison dart frog. See how colorful it is? That's nature's way of saying, don't touch me. One brush against its skin and you're done. Dead in minutes. Your nervous system shuts down, your heart stops, and there's no antidote. Grafnor's armor plates had stopped rattling. The creature stood perfectly still now, processing information that clearly didn't fit its understanding of how the universe worked. Want to see more? Because I've got plenty more, Jake said, warming to his subject now. He scrolled through image after image. A massive lion with a blood-soaked mane, clearly just finished with a kill. A pack of wolves surrounding a much larger animal, their coordinated hunting strategy obvious even in a still photo. A great white shark breaching the water surface with a seal in its jaws, showing rows upon rows of serrated teeth. A tiger crouched in tall grass, muscles coiled and ready to spring. Lions, wolves, sharks, tigers, Jake narrated as each image appeared. And that's just the big obvious stuff. I haven't even shown you the spiders that can kill you with one bite, the jellyfish that can stop your heart with a touch, the microscopic parasites that eat you from the inside out, or the plants that are literally poisonous to breathe near. He zoomed out to show a world map, then started pointing at different regions. Extreme cold at the poles that'll freeze you solid in minutes. Deserts at the equator hot enough to cook meat on rocks. Hurricanes with winds that tear buildings apart. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanoes that bury entire cities in lava. Tsunamis that wash away coastlines. Jake finally looked up from the datapad, meeting Grafnor's multiple eyes directly. His expression was completely serious now, no trace of the earlier irritation. Here's the thing you need to understand. We didn't have armor plating like you do. We didn't have venom glands or razor-sharp claws. We didn't have thick hides or natural weapons. We were slow compared to most predators. We weren't particularly strong. Our teeth were basically useless for fighting. He stood up slowly, and despite being less than half Grafnor's height, somehow the movement didn't seem small or weak. You know what we had? You know what our special advantage was? Jake tapped his own temple. Stubbornness. Pure, absolute, pig-headed refusal to lay down and die. Everything on that planet tried to kill us and we just kept going. We looked at creatures that could tear us apart and said, not today. We invented tools, we created weapons, we built shelters, we learned to use fire. We just absolutely refused to go extinct. Behind the bar, Kill9 had recovered enough to start functioning again. His tentacles worked nervously, organizing bottles that didn't need organizing. But his translator implant was active, and he was broadcasting information to the other patrons in real time because most of them had no context for what they were hearing. For those who don't know, Kill9 announced, his voice shaky but clear, humans are classified as Class 7 Death World survivors. That's the highest danger rating the Galactic Survey gives to inhabited planets. Earth has hostile megafauna, which means giant predators everywhere. It has deadly microorganisms that cause plagues and diseases. It has extreme weather patterns that swing from deadly cold to deadly heat. It has natural disasters that occur regularly. The bartender pulled up his own datapad behind the counter, accessing the galactic database. The survey notes say that humans evolved not by being the strongest or fastest, but by outlasting everything else. They're endurance predators. They would chase prey for days, literally days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies are designed to keep going long after other species would have given up. Around the bar, translation devices buzzed with activity as species shared this information in their own languages. The insect merchants were clicking frantically. The jellyfish creatures had changed color to a pale, shocked white. Even the rock-skinned miners looked impressed, which was saying something for a species that lived underground in molten lava conditions. Jake sat back down and picked up his whiskey, taking a long drink. So yeah, when you walked in here trying to intimidate everyone, I wasn't scared. I was annoyed. Because I'm trying to do math and you're in my light. Grafnor's roar started deep in its chest, building up through multiple lung chambers before exploding out of its mouth in a sound that was part scream, part growl, and entirely terrifying. The noise was so loud and so powerful that the air itself seemed to vibrate. Two glasses sitting on nearby tables simply exploded from the sound waves, sending crystal shards scattering across the floor. The station's atmospheric system, designed to filter out toxins and maintain proper air quality, immediately kicked into emergency mode, interpreting the roar as some kind of chemical attack. Pride was a dangerous thing for predators. Grafnor had just been told, essentially, that it wasn't scary, that its entire existence as a feared hunter meant nothing to this small human. For a creature whose identity was built entirely around being the apex predator, this was worse than any physical wound. The war leader's rational mind, the part that had kept it alive through countless battles, switched off completely. Pure instinct and wounded ego took over. The predator launched itself forward with explosive speed that seemed impossible for something so large. Its four legs drove against the floor with enough force to crack the reinforced plating. Claws extended to their full length, each one designed specifically for disemboweling prey in a single swipe. Grafnor's trajectory was perfect, aimed at Jake's midsection where the soft human organs would be easiest to tear open. This was a killing strike, the same move that had ended dozens of lives across multiple star systems. Jake moved. But he didn't move the way prey usually moved. There was no panic, no desperate scramble. He simply stepped to the side, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like someone avoiding a puddle on the sidewalk. The movement was efficient, minimal, wasting no energy. It was the kind of motion that came from muscle memory so deep it didn't require conscious thought. Like he'd done this exact same sidestep 1,000 times before in 1,000 different situations. Grafnor's claws sliced through empty air where Jake had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. The predator's momentum, which had seemed like an advantage, suddenly became a problem. 4 meters of armored alien traveling at high speed couldn't just stop on command. Physics didn't care about pride or hunting instincts. As the massive body flew past him, Jake's hands shot out and grabbed one of Grafnor's armored limbs. His fingers found purchase in the gaps between plates, gripping tight. Then he twisted, not fighting against the momentum but redirecting it. He used the creature's own weight and speed against it, adding just a little bit of force at exactly the right angle. It was a move that required perfect timing and understanding of body mechanics. Grafnor's trajectory changed dramatically. Instead of sailing past Jake and landing in a controlled position ready to attack again, the predator went sideways. Its body rotated in the air, completely off balance. It crashed into an empty table with tremendous force. The table, built to handle the weight of multiple heavy species, simply exploded into splinters. Wood and metal fragments flew in every direction. Grafnor hit the floor in a tangle of limbs and broken furniture, its armor plates clanging against the deck. Jake stood where he'd been, barely moved from his original position. He rolled his shoulders in a slow circle, the way someone might after picking up a heavy box. His breathing was steady and controlled. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost conversational, like he was explaining something to a student. "That's called leverage," Jake said, brushing some wood splinters off his jacket sleeve. "Basic physics. Force times distance equals work. You were providing all the force. I just changed the distance and direction. We're real good at physics. Had to be, since we couldn't win fights with just strength alone." Grafnor scrambled to its feet, armor plates rattling with what might have been rage or might have been the first touches of genuine concern. The creature had fought warriors from a dozen species. It knew combat, knew tactics, knew how to read opponents. And what it was reading from this human didn't make sense. Jake wasn't in a fighting stance. He wasn't bouncing on his toes or keeping his hands up in a guard position. He just stood there, relaxed like he was waiting for a bus. The predator decided to change tactics. Instead of the high, leaping attack, Grafnor charged low, keeping its center of gravity down, using all 4 limbs to drive forward like a battering ram. This was how VRAC took down fortified positions. Pure mass and momentum, impossible to redirect or dodge. The creature's shoulder plates were reinforced specifically for this kind of impact. It had used this move to break through walls. Jake saw it coming. Everyone in the bar saw it coming. The question was what he would do about it. Most people expected him to dive aside, to avoid the unstoppable charge. But Jake didn't move aside. He didn't dodge at all. Instead, he widened his stance slightly, bending his knees, lowering his center of gravity. His boots, heavy work boots with reinforced soles, pressed flat against the deck plating. He brought his arms up and forward, positioning them to catch the impact. The collision was spectacular. Grafnor's armored body slammed into Jake with enough force that the sound echoed through the entire bar. It was like hearing a car crash in an enclosed space. The human's boots, gripping the floor with everything they had, started to slide backward. The deck plating, designed to provide traction, left twin skid marks as Jake was pushed across the floor. But he didn't fall. He didn't collapse or break or fly backward into the wall. His legs, muscles burning with effort, kept him upright. His arms, pressed against the predator's armor, absorbed and distributed the impact across his entire body. His back stayed straight, his core tight. He slid backward 3 meters, then 4, then 5. His teeth were gritted with effort, face red from the strain. Then the momentum stopped. Grafnor was still pushing, all 4 limbs driving against the floor, but Jake had planted himself and refused to move any further. For a moment they stayed frozen there, a tableau of alien predator and human prey that had somehow become something else entirely. The bar erupted in noise. Species that didn't even have a concept of cheering were making supportive sounds. The insect merchants were clicking so fast their translators couldn't keep up. The jellyfish creatures had turned bright, excited colors. Even Kill9, who had seen countless strange things in his 20 years of bartending, was making a high-pitched whistle of amazement. Jake's voice came out strained but still clear. Humans have these things called slow-twitch muscle fibers. Makes us really good at endurance. We can keep going long after other species would collapse. It's how we hunted. We just wouldn't stop until the prey gave up. Grafnor pushed harder, disbelief fueling its efforts. This wasn't possible. The human was a quarter of its size, had no armor, no obvious muscle enhancements, no visible augmentations. By every logical measure, Jake should have been paced on the wall. Yet here he stood, boots smoking slightly from the friction but standing nonetheless. Jake finally stepped back from the still-pushing predator and simply walked away, like the fight was over because he'd decided it was over. His steps were measured and deliberate as he made his way back to his corner booth. The whiskey glass was still sitting there, ice mostly melted now, condensation running down the sides. He picked it up with a hand that was completely steady, no shaking despite what had just happened, and drained the entire thing in one long swallow. The alcohol burned going down, but it was a familiar, almost comforting sensation. Behind him, Grafnor had collapsed onto the floor. The massive predator lay there with its armor plates rising and falling rapidly, breath coming in ragged gasps. The creature wasn't bleeding. There were no visible wounds, no broken bones, nothing that required immediate medical attention. Jake had been careful about that, using techniques designed to control and exhaust rather than permanently damage. But Grafnor was completely spent, every muscle trembling with fatigue, confused and disoriented in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Jake grabbed one of the chairs that hadn't been destroyed in the brief scuffle and dragged it over to his table. He sat down heavily and for the first time showed a genuine reaction to what had just happened. His hand went to his side, pressing gently against his ribs through the stained jacket. He winced, face contorting briefly in pain. Those ribs were definitely bruised, maybe cracked. Taking a hit from something that weighed as much as a small vehicle tended to have consequences, even if you did everything right. But he didn't complain. Didn't call for medical help. Just sat there for a moment, breathing carefully, waiting for the sharp pain to fade to a dull ache. Then he picked up his datapad again, the screen lighting up to show the same financial calculations he'd been working on before this whole mess started. His finger started swiping through screens again, squinting at numbers that apparently mattered more than the fact that he just manhandled a galaxy-famous predator. "You done?" Jake asked without looking up from the screen. His tone was the same one someone might use asking if a toddler had finished their tantrum. There was no anger in it, no triumph, not even much interest. Just mild curiosity about whether he could get back to his work now. On the floor, Grafnor managed to raise its massive head. The movement was slow and took obvious effort. Its translator box had been damaged at some point during the fight, and now the voice that came out was crackling with static, breaking up between words. "You defeated me," the predator said, each word seeming to cost it something. "Why do I still live? Why not take my head as trophy?" It was a genuine question. In VRACT culture, defeating an enemy meant claiming trophies. Skulls, claws, armor plates, something to prove the victory and honor the fallen warrior. Grafnor had a collection of such trophies from dozens of species. The concept of winning a fight and then just walking away didn't compute. There had to be a reason, some cultural ritual or religious belief that explained this human's behavior. Jake actually snorted, a short laugh that held no real humor. He looked up from his datapad, meeting those 6 alien eyes with his own tired brown ones. "Because you're not food," he said, ticking points off on his fingers as he spoke. "You're not a real threat, not really, you were just being obnoxious. And killing you would mean paperwork." He emphasized that last word like it was the most important thing in the galaxy. Station regulations are insane. Self-defense killings require 17 separate forms. 17. Each one has to be filed in triplicate. Then there's the incident report, the witness statements, the security footage review. After that comes the cleanup fee, which is calculated based on mass and species toxicity ratings. Jake turned his datapad around to show Grafnor the screen. Numbers glowed there, breakdown of docking fees, fuel costs, repair estimates for his cargo ship. "See this? This is my entire operating budget for the next month. Every single credit accounted for. I'm already cutting things close. If I killed you, even in legitimate self-defense, the station would charge me for disposal of your body. Do you know how much it costs to dispose of a 4-meter VRACT corpse? More than I make in 3 months of hauling cargo." He leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "I literally cannot afford to kill you right now. Fuel costs are murder, maintenance costs are robbery, and station fees are highway extortion. So congratulations, you get to live because I'm broke." The words hung in the air for a long moment while every being in the bar processed what they just heard. Then the realization hit them all at once, spreading through the crowd like a shockwave. Translation devices buzzed frantically. The human hadn't even been trying. This wasn't his full capability. He hadn't been fighting for his life or defending his honor. He'd simply been annoyed and had handled the situation with the minimum effort required because anything more would have cost money he didn't have. Around the bar, aliens who had been frozen in fear or fascination began moving again. The insect merchants emerged from their corner, clicking excitedly to each other. The jellyfish creatures drifted down from the ceiling. The rock-skinned miners were shaking their heads in what might have been admiration or disbelief or both. Kill9, the bartender, had been standing behind his counter the entire time, all 6 tentacles gripping the edge so hard they'd left impressions in the metal. Now he released his death grip and grabbed a clean glass. He filled it with the same whiskey Jake had been drinking, expensive stuff from Earth that cost more per ounce than most species' monthly wages. Then he grabbed a first aid kit from under the counter, the kind with supplies for multiple species types. The bartender approached Jake's table carefully, like approaching a dangerous animal that seemed calm but might not be. His tentacles were trembling, though whether from fear or excitement was impossible to tell. He set both the drink and the medical kit down on the table in front of Jake. "On the house," Kill9 said quietly, his translator keeping his voice just barely above a whisper. "Both of them. The drink and the medical supplies. That was the most incredible thing I've seen in 20 years of running this bar." All 6 of his tentacles were indeed trembling now, and his skin had shifted to a purple color that apparently indicated extreme excitement in his species. Jake looked at the fresh whiskey, then at the medical kit, then up at the bartender. A slow smile crossed his face, the first genuine smile since this whole situation had started. "Yeah. Well, your floor's pretty sturdy. I was worried I might damage it when that guy hit me. Good construction work." Other patrons were starting to approach now, keeping a respectful distance but clearly wanting to be closer to whatever this human was. Several had their recording devices out, capturing footage that would spread across multiple star systems within hours. A few braver souls were even holding up items, asking Jake to sign them like he was some kind of celebrity. Grafnor slowly, painfully, dragged itself to its feet. The predator stood there swaying slightly, looking at Jake with an expression that might have been respect or confusion or something else entirely that didn't translate well across species. Then it did something nobody expected. The war leader, terror of 7 systems, bowed. A full formal bow, pressing all 4 limbs to the floor and lowering its head.